The reluctant agreement Olivia Reed stared at the thick contract on her desk, the legal language swimming before her exhausted eyes. 3 months behind on her father's medical bills and facing possible eviction from her apartment, she had never imagined her linguistics doctorate would lead her here contemplating. It's a marriage of convenience with one of Boston's most notorious financial titans. "The terms are generous," said Evelyn Porter, the elegantly dressed lawyer sitting across from her. "Mr. Blackwood is offering to clear all your father's medical debts, provide a monthly stipend of $15,000, and upon completion of the 1 year, contract a settlement of $2 million. Ow. Livia rubbed her temples. "And all I have to do is pretend to be madly in love with a man I've never met." Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. Not madly in love, simply convincingly married. The Blackwood Investment Group requires its CEO to be married before assuming full control of the family dynasty. It's an old-fashioned clause, but legally binding. "And why me?" Olivia asked, though she already knew the answer. She was invisible. Enough, a 29-year-old linguistics professor. With no social media presence and no connections to Boston's elite circles, perfect for a man who wanted a wife who would disappear after serving her purpose. "Mr. Blackwood has vetted several candidates. Your academic background makes you suitable for social functions, and your situation makes you... motivated." "Yeah." A polite way of saying desperate. The door opened, and Olivia felt the air change before she even looked up. Jackson Blackwood entered without knocking, his presence immediately filling the small university office. Tall, with dark hair and eyes like winter frost, he wore his tailored suit as naturally as other men wore t-shirts. "Professor Reed," he said, his voice deeper than she'd expected. "I assume Ms. Porter has explained the arrangement." Olivia stood. Determined not to be intimidated, she has. "Though I still don't understand why someone like you needs this charade." Something flickered in his expression, annoyance, perhaps. "The Blackwood Group has been family-controlled for 4 generations. My grandfather added the marriage clause to prevent impulsive leadership. Without a wife, I lose controlling interest to my cousin, who would dismantle everything my father built." "So you're buying a wife to buy yourself time? Offering a business arrangement beneficial to both parties?" He glanced at her cluttered desk, the stack of past due notices she'd hastily covered. "Your father has frontotemporal dementia. The specialized care facility costs $17,000 monthly. Your professor's salary is $68,000 annually." A clinical assessment of her life made Olivia's cheeks burn. "You've done your homework." "I don't enter contracts without due diligence, Professor." "Olivia," she corrected, surprising herself. "If we're going to fake being married, you should probably use my first name." For a moment, something almost human crossed his face. "Olivia, then?" He reached into his jacket, producing a fountain pen that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "The contract specifies separate living quarters in my home, public appearances as needed, and absolute discretion. Your father will be transferred to Westlake Care Center, the best in New England." Olivia took the pen, its weight substantial in her hand. One signature to secure her father's care and her financial future. 1 year of her life traded for freedom from debt. "When would this... start?" she asked, pen hovering over the signature. "Line, the wedding is scheduled for Saturday. This Saturday? It's 4 days from now." Jackson checked his watch, a gesture she would soon learn was habitual. "The Blackwood annual shareholder meeting is next Monday. I need to attend as a married man." With one deep breath, Olivia signed her name, feeling as though she were signing away more than just a year of her life. Jackson took the contract, his fingers briefly brushing hers. She was surprised to find them warm. "Welcome to the arrangement." "Olivia," he said, already turning to leave, "my assistant will contact you with details." Just like that, she had agreed to marry a stranger man whose reputation for ruthless business decisions preceded him, whose eyes revealed nothing, and whose world couldn't be further from her own. Paper promises the wedding was an exercise in opulence without warmth. Olivia stood in a designer gown she hadn't chosen, surrounded by 200 guests she didn't know, exchanging vows with a man who looked at her with the same detached interest he might give a quarterly report. Jackson Blackwood played his part flawlessly, his hand steady as he slipped the platinum band onto her finger. The kiss they shared was brief, clinically necessary performance for the Sea of Boston. Fleet, who had come to witness the union of the Blackwood heir and his surprising bride. "You're doing well," he murmured, as they posed for photographs, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. Just another hour. Olivia's smile remained fixed, though her cheeks ached. "Your family seems interested in me. You're calculating how much trouble you'll cause," Jackson replied with unexpected candor. "Especially my cousin Timothy. It's the one who looks like he's sucking a lemon." She spotted the man in question, glaring from beside the champagne fountain. "The one who loses control of the company, now that you're married?" "The very same." The reception passed in a blur of introductions and champagne. Olivia barely sipped. By the time they departed amid a shower of rose petals, she felt as though she'd run an emotional marathon. The limousine that whisked them away was mercifully quiet, Jackson immediately turning to his phone while Olivia watched the city lights blur outside the window. Blackwood Manor, as she soon discovered, was less a home than a monument. Situated on 10 acres overlooking Massachusetts Bay, the modernist mansion of glass and stone seemed to reflect its owner impressive, cold, and impenetrable. "Your suite is in the East Wing," Jackson informed her as a housekeeper named Mrs. Winters showed her inside. "I've had your belongings moved from your apartment. If anything is missing, inform Mrs. Winters." "And where will you be?" Olivia asked, trying to memorize the labyrinthine hallways. "West Wing. My office connects to my quarters. I typically work until late." He checked his watch. "The driver will be available should you need to visit your father. I've arranged for unlimited access to the care facility." With that, he disappeared, leaving Olivia to discover her suite. Space larger than her entire apartment, decorated in tasteful neutrals that felt as impersonal as a luxury hotel. 3 days passed with barely a glimpse of her new husband. Olivia spent her time visiting her father, who seemed to thrive in the upscale facility, exploring the mansion's extensive library. On the 4th night, unable to sleep in the too-perfect bedroom, she wandered into the gardens, finding a glass pavilion that glowed softly in the moonlight. Inside, surrounded by rare orchids, she finally allowed herself to weep for the strangeness of her situation, for her father, who sometimes no longer recognized her, for the loneliness that had somehow followed her into this marriage of paper promises. "Trouble sleeping?" Olivia started, hastily wiping her eyes as Jackson appeared in the doorway. Gone was the immaculate suit, replaced by dark jeans and a simple gray sweater that softened his usual corporate armor. "I'm sorry," she said automatically. "I didn't realize anyone would be out here. It's your home too, at least technically." He remained in the doorway, as if uncertain whether to enter or retreat. "I come here sometimes, when the house feels excessive." The admission surprised her. "I wouldn't have thought anything felt excessive to you." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Dorchester. My father was the custodian at Blackwood Tower before my grandfather discovered he was his illegitimate son. This," he gestured to the mansion beyond, "still feels borrowed." The revelation hung between them, an unexpected glimpse behind the CEO facade. Olivia wrapped her cardigan tighter against the night chill. "Would you like some tea?" he asked suddenly. "I was making some for myself." The unexpected offer made her blink. "Yes, actually, that would be nice." Jackson disappeared, returning minutes later with 2 steaming mugs. He handed one to Olivia Earl Grey with a touch of honey she discovered before. Taking a seat at the opposite end of the pavilion bench. "Your father's doctors report improvement," he said after a moment. "The new medication seems effective." Olivia cradled the warm mug. "You've been checking on him?" "I make it a point to monitor my investments." "Is that what he is?" "What I am?" "Investments." Jackson studied her over his mug, his eyes less cold than she remembered. "Everything begins as a transaction, Olivia. It's the simplest way to navigate the world." "That sounds lonely," she said before she could stop herself. He didn't respond, but something in his posture changed to nearly imperceptible relaxation of his shoulders, as if he'd set down a weight he'd been carrying. They sat in silence, drinking tea under the glass ceiling that reflected both their faces and the distant stars. It wasn't friendship, not yet comfort, but it was the first moment of truth in their counterfeit marriage. Unexpected rhythms by the 3rd week of their arrangement, Olivia had established a pattern to her days. Mornings were spent at the care facility with her father, afternoons in the library or the garden pavilion where she worked on her linguistics research, and evenings alone in her suite. Jackson remained a peripheral figure, their interactions limited to brief, polite exchanges when their paths crossed, until the morning she entered the kitchen at dawn to find him making coffee. "You're up early," she observed, pausing in the doorway. Jackson glanced up from the French press. "Board meeting in Tokyo via video conference. Would you like some?" It's Ethiopian Yirgachev. "Yes, thank you." She hesitated before asking, "Do you always make your own coffee? I thought Mrs. Winters handled that." "Some habits persist from before, ... His gesture encompassed the wealth surrounding them. "I find the process centering." Olivia accepted the SE8, offered mug, their fingers briefly touching in the exchange. "It's good," she admitted after tasting the rich brew. "Better than the academic sludge I'm used to." Something resembling amusement flickered in his eyes. Small mercies of fortune. She leaned against the counter, studying him in the gentle morning light. Without his suit jacket, wearing only a crisp white shirt with rolled sleeves, he seemed more human, still formidable, but accessible in a way she hadn't noticed before. "I'm attending the linguistics department fundraiser tomorrow," she said. "I should be back before the Harrington dinner." Jackson placed his mug down carefully. "Actually, I thought I might accompany you to your department event." Olivia nearly choked on her coffee. "You want to attend a university fundraiser? With linguistics professors? We're meant to be newly married. It would appear odd if I showed no interest in your professional life." The logic was sound, yet Olivia sensed something else beneath the pragmatic explanation. The linguistics department isn't exactly the stomping ground of potential investors. Perhaps I'm interested in language acquisition patterns. When she raised a skeptical eyebrow, he added, "I spent 3 years in Hong Kong. Mandarin was a necessity? You speak Mandarin?" "Among others." Languages are tools, like anything else. The revelation added another unexpected dimension to her paper husband. "Well then, I'm sure Professor Jameson will be thrilled to debate Chomsky's universal grammar theory with the CEO of Blackwood Investments." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile, but the closest she'd seen. "I look forward to it." The fundraiser proved revelatory. Jackson, whom she'd expected to endure the evening with corporate stoicism, demonstrated not only a working knowledge of linguistic principles, but genuine engagement with her colleagues. He listened intently to Professor Jameson's impassioned speech about endangered language preservation, asked thoughtful questions of the graduate students, and, most surprisingly, donated a substantial sum toward the department's fieldwork program. "That was unexpected," Olivia said as they drove home, the city lights painting moving shadows across his profile. "The donation, I mean. Language preservation aligns with several of our international development initiatives," he replied, though his explanation sounded rehearsed. After a pause, he added, "Your passion for your work is evident. It's refreshing." The compliment, small as it was, warmed her unexpectedly. Most people think linguistics is just about learning to say hello. In different languages, most people lack imagination. His fingers tapped a rhythm on the steering wheel. "Your presentation on how language shapes cognitive patterns was particularly interesting." "Psst. You're actually listening?" He glanced at her, something unreadable. In his expression, "I always listen, Olivia. It's how I've survived this long." The admission lingered between them as they arrived home, their footsteps echoing in tandem through the marble foyer. At the junction where their paths would typically diverge, she to the east wing, he to the west, Jackson paused. "Would you like a nightcap? I have some papers to review, but I could use the company." The invitation, casual yet somehow significant, hung in the air between them. Olivia found herself nodding before fully processing her decision. His study was unexpectedly comfortable. Leather chairs worn to suppleness, bookshelves filled with history and economics texts, chess set mid-game on a side table. He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid and handed one to her before settling behind his desk. "Do you play?" he asked. Noticing her interest in the chessboard, "My father taught me before his illness." Jackson studied the board. White is in trouble. 3 moves to checkmate. Olivia examined the pieces. 2, actually, she moved the white knight, demonstrating. His eyebrows rose slightly. Impressive. They fell into an easy silence, Jackson reviewing documents, while Olivia browsed his bookshelves. The quiet felt companionable, rather than strained. A rhythm neither had anticipated when signing their contract. Their peaceful evening was interrupted by the sharp ring of Jackson's phone. His expression darkened as he answered, his voice immediately shifting to the hard-edged tone she recognized from business calls. "When?" he demanded of the caller. "How bad?" The muscles in his jaw tightened. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, already reaching for his jacket. "There's been a situation at one of our manufacturing facilities in Cambridge. A fire. Was anyone hurt?" Olivia asked, rising from her chair. "2 injuries, non-critical." He paused, seeming to debate something internally. "Would you come with me?" "Timothy will be there, using this to question my leadership to the board members who are in town." The request and the vulnerability behind it surprised her. "Of course," she said, gathering her things. "That's part of our arrangement, isn't it?" Something flickered in his eyes, perhaps disappointment that she'd framed it as obligation rather than choice. "Yes," he said, his voice cooling slightly. "It is." Yet as they drove through the night toward the crisis, Olivia realized with startling clarity that her response had been dishonest. She wasn't accompanying him because of their contract. She was going because, somehow, in the space of a few weeks, Jackson Blackwood had become more to her than a signature on a legal document. Storm warning, the manufacturing crisis, marked a turning point. Working alongside Jackson through the night, watching him handle the aftermath with a blend of efficiency and unexpected compassion for the injured workers, Olivia glimpsed the man beneath the corporate mask. He directed operations with quiet authority, personally ensuring the injured employees received the best care, while simultaneously managing the PR fallout. Timothy Blackwood had indeed appeared, his concern transparently performative as he questioned Jackson's safety protocols in front of board members. Olivia, drawing on years of academic politics, had smoothly intervened. "My husband reviewed the safety systems personally just last month," she stated with confident authority, though it was a complete fabrication. "Perhaps you'd like to see the inspection reports, Timothy." Jackson's surprise at her intervention had been momentary, quickly replaced by subtle appreciation as Timothy retreated, outmaneuvered. That night forged something new between them. Partnership that extended beyond their contractual obligations. Over the following weeks, Jackson began including Olivia in business dinners, valuing her observant nature and linguistic insights into the subtle communications of potential partners. For her part, Olivia found herself no longer simply playing a role, but actively participating in their shared life. Their morning coffee ritual expanded to include breakfast on the terrace. She began accompanying him on his evening swims in the indoor pool. He started joining her for weekly visits to her father, whose condition had stabilized under the excellent care. "He likes you," Olivia remarked one autumn afternoon as they left the facility. "Dad doesn't respond to many people these days." Jackson's expression softened in a way that still surprised her. "He's a good man. I can see where you get your determination." Their fingers brushed as they walked to the car, neither acknowledging the contact nor pulling away. These small, unspoken moments accumulated between them, the language of their own developing beyond the legal terminology that had bound them together. Then came the Blackwood Annual Gala, the social event of the season, and the public debut of their marriage to Boston's elite. Olivia spent hours preparing, anxiety mounting as she contemplated the scrutiny she would face. "You look beautiful," Jackson said, when she emerged in a midnight blue gown that made her auburn hair flame by contrast. For once, his businesslike assessment failed him, the admiration in his eyes unmistakably genuine. The gala itself was a triumph. Olivia charmed investors and charitably disguised her intelligence for board members, wives who expected the typical trophy spouse. Jackson remained close throughout the evening, his hand resting at the small of her back, his eyes frequently seeking hers across conversations. "You're a natural," he murmured as they shared a rare dance, his palm warm against hers. "High praise. From the man who negotiates billion-dollar deals before breakfast? She replied, trying to ignore the flutter in her chest at their proximity. Business is straightforward. People are complex. His eyes held hers. You make me wish I'd studied humanities instead of finance. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibility, until Timothy's appearance shattered it. Charming. Performance, he said, his smile sharp as he approached them. Almost convincing. Jackson's posture immediately stiffened. Enjoying the evening, Timothy? Immensely. Particularly after reading some interesting documents. His gaze slid to Olivia. I wonder, does your lovely wife know about Osaka? The color drained from Jackson's face the first time Olivia had seen him truly rattled. This isn't the place, Timothy, no. Perhaps your office tomorrow would be better. 10 a.m. With a mocking bow, he retreated into the crowd. The remainder of the gala passed in strained silence. Jackson's warm demeanor replaced by the cold efficiency Olivia had first encountered. They drove home without speaking, the distance between them expanding with each passing mile. At the mansion, he immediately headed toward his study. I have work to do. Don't wait up, Jackson, Olivia called after him. What's Osaka? He froze, his back to her.
Oh, you know it.
Nothing that concerns our arrangement. If it threatens the company, it concerns me, she insisted, following him. We're partners in this. He turned, his expression harder than she'd seen in weeks. We're contractually bound, Professor Reed, not partners. Don't confuse the two. The deliberate use of her title, the professional distance it reimposed, struck like a physical blow. Fine. Maintain your secrets, Mr. Blackwood. I'll remember my place. Hurt and anger propelled her to her suite, where she paced furiously, the evening's warmth evaporating into confusion. After an hour of restless agitation, she found herself at her laptop, searching for connections between Blackwood, Vestments, and Osaka. The results were sparse, but telling a failed negotiation. 3 years prior, a project abandoned under mysterious circumstances and rumors of a massive financial loss. Nothing concrete enough to explain Timothy's threat or Jackson's reaction. Near dawn, exhaustion finally claiming her, Olivia made her decision. Partnership or not, she wouldn't let their arrangement collapse without understanding why. When morning came, she would confront Jackson and Timothy if necessary to uncover the truth. She never got the chance. When she emerged from her room, Mrs. Winters informed her that Mr. Blackwood had departed for Tokyo on urgent business. His message, delivered in the housekeeper's sympathetic tones, was brief. The arrangement stands. Continue as normal. Nothing felt normal in the wake of his sudden departure. The mansion, always large, now felt cavernous without his presence. Olivia moved through her days mechanically, visiting her father, working on her research, and wondering what secret from. Jackson's past threatened to unravel everything they had built. A week passed without word. Then, preparing for bed one night, she noticed lights spilling from the garden pavilion. Heart racing, she made her way through the grounds. Hope and apprehension mingling with each step. Jackson sat alone among the orchids, a glass of whiskey. Untouched beside him, looking more haggard than she'd ever seen him. You're back, she said softly from the doorway. He looked up, his eyes haunted. Olivia, were you going to tell me? I just arrived. It's light, I didn't want to disturb you. She stepped into the pavilion, the glass door closing behind her. That's not what I meant. For a long moment he was silent, the weight of unspoken truths hanging between them. Finally, he gestured to the seat beside him. You deserve to know. About Osaka? About all of it. As the night deepened around them, Jackson Blackwood, the man who had bought himself a wife, finally revealed the truth behind his carefully constructed walls. And Olivia Reed, the woman who had sold a year of her life, realized with startling clarity that somewhere between contract clauses and morning coffee, she had done the one thing their arrangement expressly forbade. She had fallen in love with her husband. Beyond signatures, the Osaka project had been Jackson's first major independent venture on ambitious development that would have revolutionized sustainable urban housing in Asia. The technology was promising, the investors eager, and the potential impact enormous. It should have been his legacy. Instead, it became his darkest failure. The structural engineering firm falsified their safety tests, Jackson explained, his voice hollow as dawn approached. I discovered it 3 weeks before breaking ground. If we'd proceeded, thousands of lives would have been at risk. So you pulled out, Olivia said, finally understanding. I canceled everything, turned investor funds. Absorbed hundreds of millions in losses rather than compromise on safety. His hands tightened around his empty glass. My father would have done the same. But the board didn't see it that way. He saw a massive financial loss and questioned. My judgment, Timothy, led the charge to remove me. That's when my father revealed the marriage clause as final protection for me. A bitter smile touched his lips. He knew the board would follow money and power without ethical constraints. He wanted to ensure whoever led Blackwood had something to lose, family connections that would humanize their decisions. Olivia absorbed this, the pieces finally aligning. So our marriage wasn't just about control of the company. It was about proving you had something beyond business in your life. Initially, yes. Jackson's eyes met hers, vulnerability evident in their depths. But then something unexpected happened. What, you? The single word held more emotion than any contract could contain. You challenged me. You saw through corporate strategies to the person beneath. You made me question whether my father was right, whether I had sacrificed too much of myself to this company. Olivia's heart raced as Jackson moved closer, his hand hesitantly covering hers. Timothy found documents suggesting I knew about the engineering flaws earlier, that I proceeded despite the risks, and only pulled out when discovery became inevitable. They're falsified, but convincing. His fingers tightened around hers. He's presenting them to the board tomorrow. What will you do? The only thing I can? Tell the truth and accept the consequences. His expression softened. But before I do, I need to tell you another truth, Olivia. One I've been avoiding for months. The pavilion seemed to hold its breath as he continued. Our arrangement specified no emotional entanglements. It was supposed to be simpler business transaction. But I find myself... He faltered, the confident CEO suddenly struggling for words. I find myself thinking of you first when I wake and last before I sleep. I find myself making decisions based not on profit margins, but on what would make you proud. I find myself imagining a future beyond our contract's end date. Olivia felt tears gathering. Jackson, let me finish, he said gently. Tomorrow I may lose everything my father built. The company, this house, all of it could be gone. If that happens, I won't be able to fulfill our contract's financial terms. Do you really think I care about that now? His eyes searched hers. What do you care about, Olivia? The question hung between them, simple yet profound. In answer, she leaned forward, bridging the final distance between them, and pressed her lips to his. Unlike their wedding kiss, perfunctory and performed, this was real, tender, and flavored with the salt of unspoken fears. When they parted, Olivia's voice was steady despite her racing heart. I care about the man who makes perfect coffee at dawn, who listens to linguistic theories without checking his watch, who visits my father even when I'm not there. Because Mrs. Winters mentioned you bring him books on military history every Tuesday. Jackson looked startled. How did you? The nurses told me. They think you're the most devoted son-in-law they've ever seen. She squeezed his hand. I care about the man beneath the CEO, and I'm coming with you tomorrow, Olivia. The board meeting will be, your wife will be there, she said firmly. That's non-negotiable. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. I'm beginning to think. I didn't read the fine print of our contract carefully enough. Consider it an addendum. Morning brought clarity and purpose. Together, they prepared for the confrontation, Jackson gathering financial records that proved his version of events. Olivia applying her linguistic expertise to identify inconsistencies in Timothy's fabricated documents. The boardroom fell silent. When they entered hand in hand, Timothy's smug expression faltering at their united front. What followed was a masterclass in partnership. While Jackson presented the financial evidence, Olivia dismantled the linguistic inconsistencies in Timothy's documents. her academic precision leaving no room for doubt about their fraudulent nature. These documents use American English spelling conventions, despite supposedly originating from our Tokyo office, she explained to the riveted board. Additionally, the syntax patterns are consistent with Timothy's other written communications, a linguistic fingerprint almost impossible to disguise. By meeting's end, Timothy was being escorted from the building, his scheme exposed, and his position terminated. The board, impressed by both Jackson's ethical stance on Osaka and the transparent partnership he and Olivia demonstrated, unanimously confirmed his continuing leadership. That was remarkable, Jackson said as they left. Blackwood Tower, the weight of months of secrets finally lifted. You were remarkable, Olivia smiled, the afternoon sun warming her face. We were remarkable together. They walked in comfortable silence until reaching the harbor, where Jackson suddenly stopped. I have a confession to make. Another one? She teased. I'm not sure I can handle more revelations today. This one's different. He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. I bought this the day after the gala. Before Tokyo. Before everything. Olivia's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a sapphire ring that echoed the blue of her eyes. Our contract specified a marriage of convenience, Jackson said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his expression. 1 year? No emotions. Mutual benefits. I'd like to propose a new arrangement. What terms did you have in mind, Mr. Blackwood? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Indefinite duration. Full emotional disclosure. Mutual support through success and failure. He took her hand. No end date. That sounds suspiciously like real marriage vows. I believe that's the general idea. He knelt, there on the harbor walkway, Boston's skyline behind him. Olivia Reed, would you do me the honor of marrying me? Not for business, not for convenience, but because somehow, in the midst of our paper promises, we found something genuine. Pedestrians had stopped to watch, smiles and phones raised to capture the moment. Olivia hardly noticed them. Her world narrowed to this man who had transformed from corporate adversary to beloved partner. I accept your terms, she said, laughter bubbling through happy tears as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Though I should warn you linguistics professors are notoriously argumentative, I'm counting on it, he replied, rising to kiss her properly, publicly. Passionately, no audience required, but the one that mattered. That evening, they returned to the garden pavilion, where their walls had first begun to crumble. Among the orchids, they spoke of future plans, a smaller home they would choose together, combining her books and his chess set. A research foundation for language preservation, someday perhaps. Children who would learn both linguistics and finance at the family dinner table. There's one thing I don't understand, Olivia said as they sat beneath the stars. Why did you come to the pavilion that first night? You said you sometimes came here when the house felt excessive, but it was after midnight. Jackson's expression softened with memory. I saw you from my window, walking through the garden in your nightgown. You looked so lost, so unlike the confident professor who had challenged me in her office. I told myself I was checking on my investment, and now he pulled her closer, his heartbeat steady against her ear. Now I know I was finding my way home. Autumn leaves danced across the manicured lawn of a mansion that no longer felt cold inside the glass pavilion. Two people who had begun as signatures on a contract discovered that the most binding agreements were those written not in legal terminology, but in the language of the heart.